Well, I'm sure you're aware of the Kentucky Derby in the rearview mirror, but man, what a race it was. Bailey gets the spoils. We'll talk about the Kentucky Derby, what we learned from the race, but of course, Sovereignty winning the race, skipping the Preakness. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Peter Pan a little bit, which is a pretty competitive race in New York, a prep for the Belmont. Up next on Horse Sense.
Welcome back to another episode of Horse Sense, our first post-Derby episode. As always, I'm Bailey Armour, joined alongside the one and
Runner up.
also probably the only Scott Shapiro out there. I've never done a search, and unfortunately, he did have the runner-up in the Derby, and I had the winner, but we won't get into that too much this week. Last week was, of course, a monster week. And thank you to everyone that played in the Exactathon promotion from Xpressbet last week. I believe there was one person who hit every Exacta on both days. So kudos to that player. Pretty impressive run by them. Scott will tip his cap. I will give you laurels there. Great turnout and lots of good activity from that promotion. So keep an eye out for that to come back for the Preakness next week. With no Exactathon this week, as you can see at the bottom of your screen, we've got a pair of money back specials, which are, you know them, you love them, in the two Royal Ascot qualifying races at Gulfstream on Saturday. So those are some juvenile races. I believe it's race number 6 and race number 10, but the promos tab will tell you for sure. And those are going to give the winner of those two races an automatic berth into some juvenile races at Royal Ascot later this year, this summer. So that's always a big fun one to watch. And then additionally, a day that we'll talk about a little bit later in today's episode, it's Peter Pan Day up at Belmont at the Big A. And to go along with that, we've got a 1 million points hit and split on the late pick 5 on that big card. And I know, Scott, you had a blog for that one, right? Is that already live?
Yes, that is live as we speak. Did that earlier
Heck yeah.
this morning. So it's a good sequence. The Man of War was disappointing. That's earlier on in the card. But I definitely will be jumping into that late pick 5. 4 stakes races, ends with the Peter Pan. The Ruffian is a really competitive race. So definitely worth checking out. And remember to register for that promotion. Any other promos this week? I think that's it, right?
That's what we got. That's the full menu.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, great job last week with those promotions. I wish I had all the exactas both days, but I compliment the, we love the money back offers. I know a lot of people like them, but they're kind of overdone a little bit. And I think personally, while I like them, I also like being rewarded sometimes for winning, not losing or, hedging in my bet. So I think that's neat. Wanted to mention the $1,500 Preakness Challenge next Saturday tournament. The next big one on our docket here at First and Xpressbet. And the success of the Preakness Future Pool continues. We were up significantly this year with that wager, I guess it's not necessarily me, but the Preakness Future wager was up a good chunk, I think close to around 25% or so. And, I continue to think that the wager offers unique handicapping in addition to a good wagering opportunity, tossing horses in there that make some sense can maybe open up some value. So a couple of good things going on, one in the rear view and one coming up. Well, obviously the talk of the racing world this week is the Derby, what happened in the race, Bailey, kind of what is the aftermath, which we're not going to talk a lot about, but I wasn't a fan of the decision to skip the Preakness. I doubt you were as well, since you'll be there next week, but I won't put words into your mouth. That's been talked about a lot. But we do want to talk about some things we can learn about the race itself that maybe we can use moving forward when handicapping and wagering on some of these races. As you saw, Derby lessons is kind of what we learned here. And I'm going to throw it to you, Ms. Armour, to let me know what maybe I don't want to say your biggest. Your second one might be the cleanup hitter here, but the first lesson you want to share with the audience.
Okay. First lesson comes with a big slice of humble pie and a semi-formal apology to Flying Dutchman Racing for saying that Owen Almighty was going to finish 15th or worst and that he belonged in the Pat Day Mile, because I, along with many other people, were very wrong about that horse. And congratulations to him on his 5th place finish, which does pay, like we talked about 2 weeks ago when I said he should have run in the Pat Day Mile instead of running in the Derby because they only paid a 5th. He did finish 5th, and that's $150,000. So I was $150,000 wrong. Congratulations on your finish. This is a much better horse than I thought he was going into this race. And personally, I'm excited to see what he can do following that one. Hopefully he can improve on this performance. I thought that Javier rode him pretty much perfectly, kind of got some trouble around the turn there, but was very impressed by him. Kudos to Owen Almighty. That's my first one. What about you?
I mean, easily. Well, let me comment on that, and then I'll send out another lesson. But yeah, I mean, to me, Owen Almighty as it was a lesson to any way you look at it, whether you were right or wrong. He proved that he is a serious horse, and I don't think he ever did anything to prove that he wasn't. I think a lot of people were more just against him trying a mile and a quarter more than anything, right? I think he proved that he is just a serious racehorse, and one of many who I really hope continues to prove what I think they proved. I thought the top 6 all ran very, very well. A couple with excuses, a couple not. But I think all 6 of them are horses that hopefully we get to see compete against each other again. But we'll see if it actually happens. For me, I'm going to go to a little bit of a wagering one. And the Derby still gives us a takeout reducer, if not multiple ones, every year. They're hard to come by in racing these days, with the computers kind of evening things out. That's kind of what they're built to do, to take horses that maybe seemed like big value. But we've got several examples this year, and we can use the obvious ones first. Render Judgment had really 200 to 1 at best type shot to win this race. He went off, I think, under 20 to 1. I know he was, in the 12, 15,
20 to 1.
20. You have the chart. Yeah, 20 to 1.
I've got the chart pulled up.
Yeah. No shot, had no shot to win the race. Absolutely zero.
No.
And then the less obvious one, and but I think a lot of people that were not, that have been more experienced in this game shared it. So I'm not going to use it as a brag, but I think we saw that Sandman was a major underlay in this race in the win pool, because interestingly enough, in the horizontal pools, he was not bet as the second choice, but he went off at 5 to 1, right?
He did, yeah.
5 to 1. I mean, he did not have a 20% chance of winning that horse race. He got the set. He didn't have an excuse, and he didn't come close. So I think the lesson is learned that there's takeout reducers in the win pool in the Kentucky Derby now regularly, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that's probably where the public is betting most of their money, as well as the fact where they're getting pushed by these influencers and stuff that have these horses that are making major dents into the. That's the pool that they're getting hit in, and it's something to keep an eye on in the future, in my opinion.
Yeah. As far as, I'm glad that you mentioned influencers. I think that's probably my second biggest takeaway from just isolated to this year's Derby was I will say, maybe like public opinion success of the Sandman campaign. I think that everything that Griffin Johnson did, and I know he's been like pretty active on Twitter this week and having some conversations with Ray Pollock and some other people about how the way that we talk about racing, how we can introduce new fans and then start to educate them about betting. And I think that's one of the great things about this show and others like ours is being a little more friendly to the beginner player and showing them like, hey, you might have known a little bit. Now maybe you know a little bit more. I mean, that horse was like 15 to 1 on the morning line and ended up going off at 5 to 1. You have people that
8 to 1. I mean, I think they knew that he was going to get bet, but I think a lot of it had to do with what you're talking about. As much
I was surprised at just how much he got bet, because I didn't think that just people talking about it online. I mean, he was all over TikTok, like millions of views, millions of comments and everything about this horse, just based on the traffic that it was getting and appealing to a new audience that might not have, not only just might be becoming a racing fan for the first time, but becoming a racing bettor for the first time and actually putting some of their money where their mouth is. And then how can we turn around and capitalize on continuing the development of those people in the sport as we get through the rest of the year, not only through the rest of the Triple Crown, but onto Travers, Whitney, Classic, etc., and continuing So I think we should definitely take a look at more opportunities to continue to bring those new players into the game. And I would say this year's Derby is a great example and success of that for sure.
Yeah, if they're used right, I've seen influencers that have been paid a lot of money with a lot of followers that have done very
And not a
little
lot of
because they
return.
haven't. Yeah, that happens all the time. But I think Griffin was a pretty good example this week. I think, a little bit, not on him, but I think, just an understanding of how, just an overall understanding of how this game makes money would be helpful
Yeah.
to these people that are, really going out there. I'm not knocking him for it. I think
Sure.
I agree with his sentiments on, taking this game to places that I don't know that you do because of our age difference. When it comes to apps and whatnot, I just think it's one thing, that's great. The only thing that I saw from him that I didn't, we got to, I love how the game wants to think developing fans is the way to go, and they can convert them to players because that's how the money is made. But the
Right.
problem is that hasn't worked for 20 some years with this attempt. And I think having a better understanding, if you're going to be out there and paid to do so, a little bit of a better understanding of the marketplace and how we will be able to hopefully get racing back to its peak one day. It takes a little bit more of an understanding of the gambler, and not really saying that gambling's great. I understand it, but I thought overall Griffin made a great account of himself, and I'm glad he was out there. And hopefully we can get many more of the same type of influencers involved in horse racing.
Absolutely. What was your other takeaway from this year's Derby?
Yeah, I'm gonna knock a couple of prep races, and we were right about it for what in this case with the
Yeah.
Arkansas Derby. Basically that whole series of races in Arkansas as well as Louisiana. Now Louisiana has been a place where some really good 3-year-olds have run in the campaign. Epicenter was best in the Derby. Zandon was probably second best. They both raced there. But that race this year was not there. Those series of races this year were nowhere near the females, where it was good cheer down there, and they weren't
Yeah.
very
Ooh.
competitive. And Arkansas was, more of the same and maybe less obvious because we were talking about Sandman. Nobody seemed to gain the same lesson. Tastic was a big price. Sandman was not. So I
Yeah.
think those two preps, and don't take this, maybe this is a poor thing for a lesson because it doesn't mean anything going forward. I think clearly, it was a down year to an extent for horsemen like Brad Cox and Steve Asmussen, some of the best
Yeah.
barns in Louisiana and Arkansas to an extent. And Brad also
Yeah.
shifted some of his top 3-year-olds to Florida.
Mhm.
So we'll see how that ends up shaking out. But just noticed this year, we noticed it early and it ended up playing out. So maybe the lesson now that I'm thinking about it is just because those horses were in the Derby, when they drop in class and they're going to take a lot more money, do not assume that they are legitimate grade 1 animals, because at this point,
There you go.
I don't necessarily think any of them have proven it other than maybe East Avenue. Well, obviously, the action cools down a little bit before the second leg of the Triple Crown next Saturday, where Bailey will be in Baltimore, Maryland. But not really one you could snooze through this week, like some might think. We're here to tell you, not even close. There's always action to be had at Xpressbet and First Bet, but particularly this late pick 5 that some chick put together. This late pick 5 hit it, split it. And it's a good sequence. We talked about it a little bit. 4 stakes races in the sequence. The last one, the Peter Pan. I'd say the Ruffian might be considered the feature, but this is probably the race people will look at most, because there have been horses that have won the Peter Pan and wheeled back in the Belmont Stakes to win. Reminder for anybody out there that picked up the program and is a little bit newer to racing: the Belmont Stakes will not be at Belmont this year. This race isn't either. This race is at Aqueduct. The Belmont Stakes is at Saratoga again this year. So keep that in mind. Obviously, a big asterisk there, but Saratoga, not a bad place to have the event. I know you looked at this race, Bailey. Curious for your thoughts, and then maybe I'll try to apply an angle.
Yeah, you were definitely right that when we talked about it earlier, that there is pretty much no early speed at all in this race. It's always interesting to me when you have this many closers, some deeper closers than others, some shallow closers, as we've started to call them, all in the same field. Like, what are they even going to do when they come out of the gate if you have nobody that wants to go to the lead? Do some of these kind of inside middle post horses try to go? Some of the ones that have set maybe just off the pace before, horses Hill Road, maybe McAfee tries, Captain Cook is going to try probably. I don't know how it's going to shake out with them breaking out of the gate like this. Also, not so slowly, but no one is going to be super forwardly placed like we've seen in some other races like the Derby. I did want to ask you though, and you might know the answer rather than me. Do you know why they would put the Man o' War as race 2 instead of doing an all stakes late pick 5 and putting that allowance up there? Like what's the advantage of that?
Size of the fields. So I
Okay,
think
that makes
people are
sense.
less likely to be attracted to it, and then definitely less likely to play bigger tickets if there's a smaller field. I think there's, not to get too into inside baseball, but I think, there's a debate whether the all stakes, calling it all stakes, gets you more, because it kind of does attract money, right? You call something all stakes, there's a reason that the marketing
Right.
team do that. So clearly they thought the allowance race was going to attract more. Not a great look for the Man of War, but I think it'll lead to more handle.
Yeah, we won't get too much in the Man o' War, but I was just curious about that on your perspective, and I think that's definitely a good one. I knew there had to be kind of a simple answer that I wasn't getting, so good
That's
point on
my
there.
hypothesis. I don't know for sure. That's usually the case when stakes races are left out of the late races. Horizontal, it's usually to beef up the biggest horizontal pool potentially of each day.
Yeah, with this race, I think Captain Cook is probably the one to beat here. Of course, he's had, a solid earlier in the year career. Didn't quite make it to the Derby, but we might see him heading into the Belmont, like you said. Most famous Belmont winner in recent memory to have won the Peter Pan is
AP Indy?
Arcangelo.
AP Indy?
AP
Oh,
Indy is probably the most famous, but
journalist,
recently I got
Arcangelo, AP Indy.
yes, I got quizzed on this earlier in the week, so this is probably burned into my brain now that Arcangelo won the Peter Pan. I'm personally going to take a shot against Captain Cook on the outside with the number 10 Lordship. That is the second, well, this will be the second time start for this Chad Brown horse. He is also entered in a non-graded stake at Monmouth, and I truly have no idea at the time that we film this if he's going to go to the Monmouth stake or if he's going to go to this one. I like the way he's been training, and he has a full brother, also by Gunrunner, out of this Young Giants Causeway mare. This is only her second foal, and the
She was
older
good,
brother,
right? Flag Day, wasn't it a shug horse or something?
she was unraced actually. So there is a
Ah,
British, so there's another horse by the same name, a British mare named Flag Day, or Great Britain bred, who's the dam of Chile Flag. This is a different Flag Day who is unraced, but they bred this one to Gunrunner and then bred back to Gunrunner, which is a $250,000 stud fee, if I'm correct. So those are some very expensive horses out of an unraced mare. So clearly they like what they've seen. And the older brother actually just ran on Derby Day and was third in the Ali Sheba last Saturday. So then the younger one is running back. This will be his second start. Kind of a little bit uncertain with only one under the belt and a jockey change this time, but I think that you might be able to get a decent price on this horse. So I'm going to take a stance with the 10 Lordship.
yeah,
How in the world do you see this playing out?
I just want the horses that are going to be up close, and I think this is an evenly matched group, but I think there's a lot of horses that I can put a line through unless they're going to really change their tactics. And I don't know if I want a horse taking them, someone taking themselves out of their game. That's an unknown. So I like, my opinion, I think Uncaged is going to be on the lead. He doesn't break well, but you've got Kendrick Carmouche, an aggressive rider. They added blinkers last time out. That was a one-term race. And I just think that the way, this horse has never gone 2 turns and an aggressive rider, knowing the way this is played out. And I haven't checked the weather forecast in New York, but I know I'm, about, a couple hours north, barely, at the most in terms of,
Yeah.
mileage less, or south. I'm south, and it could rain. So there could be moisture in the track. And this horse is 2 for 2 over a off
Over the
track.
mud.
So Uncaged to me, I don't think this horse has really proven that much. His wins, he's had things his way, whether it be a bias or the right race shape. And then I think Vassimo, like to your point, I know you like to look at the post positions and asked if that was where I thought maybe the speed would come from. I know this horse doesn't look like he's going to be very fast on paper, but those last 2 races at Fairgrounds were run much faster up front. His previous races, he was right off the pace, and we've seen Irad Ortiz, especially when he's at inside draws, ride these 3-year-olds aggressively. He might think he has the best horse, or at least one of them, or he might not and want to get the jump. So to me, I'm gonna trust in Todd Pletcher in this race. Captain Cook should also get a good trip right off the speed, but Richard Dutrow Jr. basically said he doesn't want a 1 1/8 after the Wood, and now he runs him back at a 1 1/8. I'm surprised he's not running him in the Preakness if he's running him in this race instead. I thought we would see him cut back. So while he makes a lot of sense and is the one to beat, morning lines are not out by the time we recorded this. But I like the 2 Todd Pletcher runners, Vassimo just at the rail and be very involved very early, and hopefully uncaged to maybe be loose on the lead at a bigger price, I think.
I like the way you think. As always, thank you so much for watching another episode of Horse Sense as we covered our Derby lessons, our key lessons from this year's edition of the Kentucky Derby, and looking ahead to the Peter Pan Stakes at Belmont and Aqueduct this upcoming Saturday. Let us know in the comments what you learned from the Derby and who your Derby horse might have been, how the day went for you. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to make sure that you're getting all of our content ahead of the Preakness next week. Like Scott mentioned, I'm going to be on site in Baltimore starting Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. So you can follow me at _BetBailey on the platform of your choice to get some behind the scenes action as we look ahead to the Preakness on Saturday, May 17th. Keep an eye out for all of our Preakness promotions from Xpressbet and FirstBet, and good luck this weekend.